Hey guys, welcome back to The Readers. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is an entitled People story. What would you do if your HOA tried to fine you when you're not even a member? My new HOA president didn't care about the facts. He trespassed on my property and threatened to put a lien on my house over a BBQ smoker. He thought he was the law, but I was about to teach him a very expensive lesson. The HOA president physically walked onto my property to hand me a form demanding I ask for permission to use my own backyard. It took him about 45 minutes in front of his entire board to figure out that he had no more authority over my land than a random stranger on the street. It cost the HOA a lot more than embarrassment before all was said and done. Let me back up. I bought my property about 6 years ago. It is an older farmhouse sitting on roughly 2 acres, and it has been there since the 1950s, long before the subdivision that surrounds it on 3 sides was ever platted. When the developer carved up the farmland to build all those matching houses back in the late 90s, my parcel was owned by an older man who flat out refused to sell. The developer built around him. The man eventually passed, and his estate sold the property to my wife and me. What that means practically is that we sit inside the neighborhood geographically, but we are not part of it legally. Our deed does not reference the subdivision's declaration of covenants or conditions at all. Our lot number predates the entire development. We are not signatories to anything the HOA relies on to claim authority over its members. When we did our due diligence before buying, our real estate attorney flagged this specifically and told us it was actually a selling point since we would never be bound by whatever rules the association decided to cook up. We understood exactly what we were buying. For the first 3 years, nobody bothered us. The neighbors on either side were perfectly pleasant. People waved from their driveways. We kept the property clean, the grass cut, the fence in good repair. There was no friction. The HOA existed, had a board, presumably held meetings, but they left us alone and we had zero reason to think about them. That changed when a new president got elected. I never learned a lot about this guy's background, but from what neighbors told me over the following months, he had moved into the subdivision about 2 years before, immediately joined the board as a general member, and then ran for president on a platform of what he called restoring the neighborhood standards. He was one of those guys who had strong opinions about paint colors and whether your trash bins were visible from the street. The kind of person who treats a residential subdivision like it is his personal property, and everyone else is just renting space in it. The first sign that things were going to be different was when a few of my neighbors mentioned in passing that the new president had been asking around about the old farmhouse. They said he seemed irritated that it did not appear in the HOA's member records. Apparently, he took that as an administrative error rather than a legal reality. That detail matters a lot later. In the spring of that year, I decided to build a proper outdoor cooking setup, not just a standard grill on a patio. I wanted a real built-in wood-fired smoker, the kind you see at actual barbecue restaurants, with a firebox on one end, a long cooking chamber, and a chimney stack. My wife and I had talked about it for years. We had the space on the south side of the yard, well away from the fence line, and I had already pulled the appropriate permit from the county. The contractor I hired had done similar builds before, and we had the whole thing mapped out. Work started on a Tuesday. By Thursday afternoon, there was a bright orange notice zip-tied to my gate. I pulled it off and read it standing in the driveway. It was from someone calling themselves the compliance officer of the HOA, and the tone of it was something else. It said that my property was in violation of the Architectural Review Committee's guidelines, that no exterior structure modification had been submitted for approval, and that I had 10 business days to either halt construction or submit a complete application to the ARC for review. It described the smoker as an unapproved exterior installation inconsistent with community aesthetic standards. There was a number to call and a form to fill out. I set it down on my kitchen counter and went back outside to check on the contractor's progress. My wife read it that evening and asked if I was going to respond. I told her I did not think I needed to. We were not members. Their compliance officer had no more authority to issue notices to me than my mail carrier did. I figured it was a case of the new guy not doing his homework and that once someone explained the situation to him, that would be the end of it. That was a naive assumption. A week later, on a Saturday morning, I was in the yard checking the curing process on some of the masonry work when I heard the gate latch. I turned around and the HOA president was walking across my yard toward me. He had a clipboard and a folder. He had not knocked. He had not called out from the gate. He had just opened it and walked in like he owned the place. I asked him what he was doing on my property. He introduced himself with his title and launched right into it, telling me that I had ignored a compliance notice and that the situation had become a formal matter. He held out a form he described as an application for property improvement and told me I had 48 hours to submit it or the association would begin daily fines and would place a lien on my home. I did not raise my voice, I just asked him one question. I asked if he could show me the specific section of the HOA's governing documents that gave the association jurisdiction over my specific lot number. He told me that everyone in the neighborhood was covered by the bylaws. He said it like it was obvious. I told him that was not accurate for my parcel, and I suggested he check with whoever handled the HOA's legal work before he made any more threats about fines or liens. He told me not to be difficult and to just fill out the form, that it was a simple process and there was no reason to make it into a whole thing. I told him to please leave my property. He left, but he was not happy about it. The folder and the clipboard went back under his arm and he walked out the gate without another word. I watched him go, then went back to what I was doing. That should have been the end of it. He should have gone home, called whoever the HOA's attorney was, gotten the honest answer, and quietly dropped the whole thing. Instead, he decided to escalate. The certified mail arrived the following week. It was a formal notice from the HOA declaring their intent to impose daily fines beginning in 14 days if the construction was not halted and an ARC application was not submitted. It cited specific dollar amounts, referenced sections of their declaration that had nothing to do with my property, and was signed by the president and both co-officers of the board. It was written in very official-looking language, the kind designed to make the recipient feel like they have no options. Around the same time, my contractor called me to let me know that on his last 2 visits, a man had been standing at the entrance to the street where my neighborhood access road met the main road, and had actually stepped out and asked to see proof that the contractor was authorized to work in the community. My contractor told him to get out of the way, or he would call the police, and the guy backed down. But it had happened twice. I did not need to guess who was responsible. Then one of my neighbors who was on decent terms with me sent a screenshot. There was a private neighborhood Facebook group I was not in and could not see, and the HOA president had posted in it about an uncooperative property owner who was refusing to engage with the association's improvement approval process and creating a potential aesthetic and safety concern for the community. He did not use my name but described the project in enough detail that anyone who had driven past my property would know exactly who he meant. Several people commented agreeing with him. A few expressed concern about property values. I read that message 3 times. Up to that point, I had been treating the whole thing as an annoyance and a misunderstanding that would resolve itself once reality caught up with the president's ego. But blocking my contractor and then going to the neighborhood social media to build a case against me in the court of public opinion was a different category of behavior. That was calculated. He was trying to pressure me through embarrassment and through creating community hostility toward me, and he was doing it knowing full well that he had not actually verified whether he had any legal standing. That was the moment I stopped treating it as something to be patient about. I called a real estate attorney the following Monday. I had used this same attorney for the original purchase of the property, and she was already familiar with the unusual nature of the title and the non-affiliation with the HOA. I walked her through everything that had happened from the first orange notice to the certified mail to the social media post to the contractor being blocked. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she told me a few things clearly. First, the HOA had 0 legal authority over my property and never had. Second, the lien threat was meaningless in the context of a non-member, because a lien requires some legal basis and they had none. Third, the attempt to block my contractor on a public road was potentially actionable depending on how it had been done. Fourth, and most importantly, the longer this went on without a formal response from me, the more they would assume silence meant submission and the worse it would get. She suggested a 2-part approach. The first part was a formal written notice, not the kind you dash off on your own, but a proper legal document drafted by her firm, putting the HOA on notice that my property was not under their jurisdiction, that their notices and threats had no legal force, that I considered their actions harassment, and that any further conduct of this type would result in legal action. The second part was what she called a clarification meeting, a face-to-face where we could make the situation undeniably clear to every member of the board at the same time, so no one could later claim they had not been informed. I told her both sounded good and asked her to proceed. She drafted the notice and sent it to the HOA's registered address via certified mail. It was thorough. It cited the original plat records, the date of the subdivision's declaration, and the specific language of my deed confirming no covenant attachment. It named the president by his position and documented each specific incident: the gate trespass, the certified fine notice, the contractor harassment, and the social media post. It closed by stating that if any further action was taken against my property, my contractor, or my access, I would seek damages for harassment, trespass, and clouding of title. My attorney also contacted a licensed land surveyor she worked with regularly and arranged for him to pull the original county plat records from the 1950s, the subdivision plat from the late 90s, and the full chain of title on my property going back decades. He put together a presentation package, that is the only word for it, showing clearly where the subdivision boundary lines ran and where my parcel sat in relation to them. It was not ambiguous. My property was an island. The HOA's jurisdiction stopped at my fence. The meeting was set for a Saturday morning at the property line, literally at the edge of my yard where it met the HOA street. My attorney was there. The surveyor was there with his documentation spread out on a folding table. All 5 members of the HOA board showed up, including the president, who looked like he was expecting a negotiation rather than an education. What followed was not a negotiation. My attorney started by having the surveyor walk through the plat maps. He pointed to each relevant boundary line and explained what it represented. He showed the original farmhouse lot, clearly delineated, and then showed the subdivision plat laid over it, showing the gap that my property created. He explained that when the subdivision's declaration of covenants was recorded, it referenced specific lot numbers within the plat, and my lot number was not among them. He said this plainly and without drama and showed the actual recorded documents as he said it. 2 of the board members were clearly hearing this for the first time. One of them, the treasurer, kept looking back and forth between the documents and the president with an expression that suggested she was starting to understand what had been done in her name. My attorney then pulled out a copy of the HOA's own governing documents and asked the president to read aloud the section that defined the geographic scope of the association's authority. He hesitated, but the other board members were watching, so he read it. It referenced the subdivision plat by name and recording number. The same subdivision plat that the surveyor had just shown did not include my lot. There was a silence after he finished reading. My attorney then placed a single document on the table. She explained that it was a declaration of non-jurisdiction, a formal statement that the HOA acknowledged it had no authority to regulate, fine, lien, or otherwise act against my property or anyone working on my property, and that any future attempt to do so would be met with immediate legal action for which the individual board members might be held personally liable in addition to the association itself. She told them that in exchange for signing the document, I was agreeing not to pursue the harassment and trespass claims I currently had grounds to pursue. She told them they were welcome to consult their own attorney before signing, but that I would be filing the legal action within 10 business days if the document was not signed. The president started to object. He said something about how the association had always considered my property to fall within their community, and that surely there was a more cooperative approach to handling the situation. The treasurer cut him off. She asked my attorney point blank whether the board members could be personally sued for what had already happened. My attorney said yes, depending on how a court viewed the individual conduct, particularly the trespass and the contractor interference. The treasurer looked at the document on the table for about 5 seconds and then asked if they could step away to discuss privately. They walked about 30 feet away and talked in low voices for maybe 10 minutes. I stood with my attorney and the surveyor and did not try to overhear. At one point the president's voice got louder and one of the other board members said something sharp back at him that made him go quiet. When they came back, the treasurer asked for a pen. All 5 of them signed. The president was last, and his signature looked like it hurt him physically to write. My attorney collected the document, made copies on the spot from her bag, handed one to the board, kept the original, and told them she would be recording a copy with the county clerk as a matter of public record so that any future board would have notice of the agreement. She thanked them for their time, and that was that. The board walked back up the street. The president did not look back. I shook my attorney's hand and thanked the surveyor and went inside to make coffee. The following week, my contractor came back and finished the smoker without interference. It is a beautiful piece of work. The firebox is on the left, the cooking chamber runs about 6 feet, and the chimney stack hits maybe 8 feet off the ground. You can see it clearly from the street on the south side. As it happened, based purely on the layout of the lots, it was also clearly visible from the president's front window. That was not intentional, but I will not pretend I was unhappy about it. The story did not end with the signing. About 2 weeks after the meeting, the neighbor who had sent me the Facebook screenshot messaged me again. The HOA had held a board meeting the previous week, and several members had asked about the legal costs the association had incurred over the dispute with my property. The president had apparently been vague about the details, but someone pushed him on it, and it came out that the association had spent close to $2,000 on attorney consultations in the process of threatening and harassing a property that was never under their authority in the first place. That number circulated through the neighborhood fast. The community Facebook group lit up, not in a way that was helpful to the president. People were asking why HOA dues had been spent on a legal dispute with someone who was not even a member, why the board had not verified jurisdiction before sending certified notices and threatening liens, and who had authorized the president to block a contractor on a public street. The president posted a defense that basically amounted to saying he had acted in the community's best interests, but the response was not sympathetic. 3 weeks after the signing, a special meeting was called. My neighbor kept me updated. The agenda item was a motion to formally censure the president for misusing HOA funds and acting outside the scope of his authority. The vote was not close. The censure passed, and the president announced at the meeting that he was resigning effective immediately. He was out of office within 30 days of signing a document admitting he had never had any authority over me. I heard through a couple of neighbors that he had tried, in the days before the meeting, to frame the whole situation as a failure by the previous board to properly document which properties were under the HOA's jurisdiction. He said it was an administrative problem, not a leadership one. The neighbors I talked to did not buy that explanation. A month after his resignation, I threw a large cookout. My wife and I invited everyone from the surrounding streets, every neighbor we had a cordial relationship with, which was most of them. We smoked 2 full briskets and a rack of ribs. We set up tables in the backyard, and people came and went for most of the afternoon. It was the first big gathering we had hosted in years, and it was genuinely a good time. The only people not invited were the HOA board members. That was not spite exactly. It was just that the board had signed a legal document under duress, not because they had any change of heart, and I did not feel like making small talk over brisket with people who had spent several months threatening me. The rest of the neighborhood had nothing to do with what the president had done, and they were genuinely welcome. The smoke from the chimney was visible for 3 blocks. A few people asked me at the cookout what had actually happened with the whole situation, and I gave them the short version, which was that my property predated the HOA, I was never a member, and someone had decided not to check that fact before spending other people's money on attorney fees trying to bully me. Most people found that deeply funny. A couple of them said they had wondered why I was being discussed in the Facebook group as an uncooperative resident, and now it made more sense. The declaration of non-jurisdiction is on file with the county. My attorney made sure of that within a week of the signing. It means that whoever sits on that HOA board in the future, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, the public record will show that my property is explicitly acknowledged as outside their authority. They can't claim confusion. They can't call it a gray area. It is documented. The smoker gets used most weekends between spring and fall. The ribs have been outstanding. My wife has developed a dry rub recipe that I think is genuinely world-class, though I may be biased. The president moved out of the subdivision about 4 months after his resignation. I do not know where he went, and I did not ask. His house sold quickly. The new HOA president is a different kind of person entirely. Calm, practical, not interested in drama. She came and introduced herself to us about a month after taking office, just to make clear she understood the situation with our property and that we would have no problems from the board going forward. We appreciated that. She declined my offer of leftover ribs, but said she might take me up on it another time. One thing I want to address, because people always ask when I tell this story in person, is whether I considered just filling out their form to make the whole thing go away. The honest answer is no. Not for a single second. Filling out that form would have been an implicit acknowledgement that they had some right to demand it from me. Even if they had looked at it and approved whatever I was building, I would have set a precedent that any future board could point to as evidence that I had voluntarily submitted to their oversight. That would have created real legal complications down the road when the next power-hungry president decided to push things further. Sometimes you have to spend some money and some time to establish a boundary firmly, because a soft boundary just invites someone to test it again. My attorney made that exact point when I asked her about it. She said that had I submitted even a partial application, the HOA would have treated it as an admission of jurisdiction, and undoing that would have been far more expensive than what we ended up doing. I think about that original orange notice sometimes, the one zip-tied to my gate. The compliance officer who left it probably did not know any more than the president did. They were given a job and a clipboard and told to go flag violations, and they did it. The fault was with whoever assigned the job without first checking whether the person receiving the notice was actually subject to the rules being enforced. There is a lesson in there somewhere about what happens when you assume authority you do not actually have and then dig in when someone questions it instead of just checking your facts. The president had a dozen opportunities to stop and verify his legal footing before things got to the point they got to. He could have made a quick call to an attorney after I first pushed back. He could have looked at the county records himself. He could have listened to his own board members when they started asking questions at that final meeting. He did not do any of that, and it cost him his position and the HOA $2,000 and a permanent public record of their overreach. I did not need their permission to build my smoker. I never did. But I will admit the ribs taste a little better knowing I ate them after watching them pull those notices off my gate for the last time. The next one is a malicious compliance story. A little over a decade ago, I worked up in the oil patch in northern Canada on different IT contracts. The current contract I was on was maintaining virtual meeting rooms. The oil company had decided that if you didn't need to be on site, they would move your job south and pay you 25 to 50% less. When you needed to meet with people on site, you'd book a meeting and all is golden. The IT company I was with was amazing, but they lost the contract to an international IT company A servicing oil company B. I was one of the fortunate few that got a job with IT company A, which was so unbelievably stupid. Most of the rest of the talent that had been working IT under contracting companies for 10 plus years took a walk. I think the management literally sat down and said, "What's the absolute worst way we can mess things up?" And then they did that. They hired a bunch of fresh out of college or unqualified people, and within a few months our ticket count had gone from averaging around 50 at any given time to well over 600 and growing with no end in sight. This is all well and good, and we got chewed out for the ticket count being high. We got chewed out for bringing it down low because our ticket closure rates weren't similar. It didn't really matter. Good, bad. We got chewed out. Company A was hemorrhaging money to Company B. Like every ticket outside of the allowed failures that was a failure and not resolved was a fine, and there were multiple sites. Basically, IT Company A ended up paying Oil Company B to do IT for them. Most salaried oil company employee who had computer problems took weeks or months to get problems solved, but they were salaried and it didn't affect oil coming out of the ground, so it didn't matter. Except for the meeting rooms. Managers couldn't have virtual meetings with staff, things were getting delayed, and it was going to affect oil coming out of the ground, so it was a problem. The 12 of us working there were given full-time work and 6 vehicles. The supervisor took one for himself for driving to and from town and wouldn't let anyone use it during the day, so that left 5 vehicles. It used to be that we were dedicated to a specific type of work, but now everyone did everything, and we were expected to just check the meeting rooms as we drove by, or if we had a ticket in that building. So all the meeting room maintenance was just not being done, and the new guys that would get a ticket to facilitate a virtual meeting of the vice presidents, directors, etc., of the oil company would just not show up, and the meeting would fail. During this time, I had been loudly and constantly complaining about our inability to check meeting rooms in buildings that we don't have tickets for, when we don't have a vehicle to get there anyways. A coworker told me that one of IT Company A's managers had come north to review the situation, was at lunch, saw one of my emails, said, "I'm not reading that," tossed down his phone and ate his lunch. So I just gave up, gave in, and did what I was told. I had been busting my ass to keep everything working for all the execs of Oil Company B for months, and it was time to cue malicious compliance. There was a building in town with meeting rooms. Our building on site was around 45 minutes north. Every morning, rather than being on site and working at 7, I would be at the town building at 8. checking a meeting room, stocking it with supplies, and fixing problems. Except I wasn't because it was in use and I couldn't get in. So I would drive north and get to our building around 9 and start my day, do a few tickets, be one of the only ones that the oil execs saw that could actually make meetings run successfully, and then leave at 2 to go check a meeting room I couldn't get into and then go home. This lasted about a month before the oil execs called in my supervisor, manager, and manager's manager and said something along the lines of, "Put I_identify as Astartes on doing just meeting rooms and meetings." I got called into a meeting with my supervisor. Most of my other work was taken away. I was given my own vehicle, and I was told to check all the meeting rooms every week, a 4-person job, and to take care of all of the exec meetings. I told my supervisor that it wasn't physically possible for me to be in 3 or 4 places at once to check all the meeting rooms. He didn't care. He didn't care how I did it, just get it done. So I got it done. Every time we checked a meeting room, we had to scan a QR code with a company phone that we would then export into Excel and submit as the rooms we checked. Every minute of every day, I clicked the scan button and scanned nothing. At the end of the week, I would export to Excel, then get the list of all the room codes, randomize them, paste them in, save, and submit. Click I'm in town checking a room. 1 minute later, click I'm 30 kilometers north. 1 minute later, click I'm 70 kilometers across the river, etc. I breezed through rest of my stay there, attending executive meetings and keeping them happy, starting late and ending early with my own dedicated vehicle. I applied for a new job, was approved, and just had to wait on the background check. My start date was given at about 6 months out and I was set. I planned a 3-week vacation at IT Company A, months in advance, and then on my last day before vacation, I handed in my 3 weeks' notice and left. I had made some good friends there. I kept getting invited to the social events for some time, and my understanding from the new people is that they ended up hiring more people, had put 4 people on meeting rooms, and still couldn't get the work done because no one ever bothered to learn it. Eventually, the IT company lost the contract. The next one is an entitled people story. I have a 16-year-old friend who I've known for about 4 years from when I lived in Canada. We're both 16 now. I moved back to Korea about 2 years ago, so I haven't really seen her since then. As time went by, we kind of ran out of things to talk about. These days I've been really busy studying because I'm preparing to take Korea's university entrance exam, so I don't have much time to contact her. Even though I've been busy, I still think about her a lot. Whenever studying gets hard, I remind myself that I want to see her again someday, and that gives me strength. But she started having issues with me. She told me I was lying about studying and just pretending to study while actually playing games. That really hurt me because I am working hard just for her. I'm trying to improve myself for both her and me, so hearing things like "you don't even study" or "why do you lie about studying" made me so angry. How could she say that to someone who's genuinely studying for their future? On top of that, she talks to me like she's trying to teach me or prove me wrong all the time. Whenever I say something slightly off, she literally asks AI if I'm wrong and then mocks me about it. That made me lose so much respect for her. Then there was the catfish thing. I rarely post selfies, maybe once or twice a month on Instagram stories. One day she saw my photo and called me a catfish, saying that I look totally different in real life. I was furious, but I held it in and just left her on scene. She also got mad at me for not posting selfies on Snapchat anymore. I used to post my face for the Snapchat streak, but lately I just send random pictures like my wall, my figurines, or some drawings because I don't feel like taking selfies every day. Then she got angry and said, "Why don't you post your face anymore? You're pretty, why not show it?" Like what? Whether I post my selfie or not is my choice. It's not something to get mad about, and honestly, she treats me like her emotional trash can. Whenever she fights with her boyfriend, parents, or friends, she dumps everything on me. I can listen sometimes, of course, but it became too much. She always wanted me to take her side and agree with her even when she was clearly wrong. She'd say things like, "Right? I'm not wrong, right?" and basically force me to say yes. People have limits, and she never seems to notice. She dumps all her problems on me almost every day, and I always have to comfort and calm her down every time when she tells me her problems. If I didn't answer her calls, she'd say I was avoiding her or being a bad friend. But when we did talk, it'd last for 3 to 5 hours. I barely had time for myself or my studies because of that. When I said I needed to hang up, she'd say 20 more minutes and keep dragging it out. Sometimes it even lasted 10 hours, and if I ever tried to set up a boundary, she would give me attitude and make me feel bad for it. One time I told her I couldn't talk because my teeth were hurting. I'm wearing Invisalign, but I hadn't worn it for 4 days and my teeth were really sore. I just said, I can't talk today, my teeth hurt so much. Instead of showing any sympathy, she immediately started talking about herself like, oh, I had 2 wisdom teeth removed once I just got 8 needles into my jawbone and haven't been able to eat properly because they broke my teeth with a drill and pulled them out. And went on and on about how she went through surgery and how painful her experience was. It felt like my pain didn't even matter. After a while, I started listening to her less, not because I didn't care, but because it was just emotionally draining. Then something happened. She sent a reel about advertise bait to one of her friends, and that friend said it looked fake. She started teasing that friend, saying things like, "You're wrong, you don't know anything," the same way she'd treat me before. So I said gently, I kind of thought the same thing too. It might be a bait ad. Suddenly she got mad and said, why are you taking her side? You never take mine, then I won't take your side either. Recently she started bad-mouthing that same friend again and I couldn't take it anymore, so I said, you know, in life people lose friends and make new ones. You just have to learn from it and move on. I don't think I can help with this anymore, so please stop talking to me about her. She said, okay, I get it. If you ever have anything hard going on, I won't listen to you too. But the very next day, my hamster, who I really loved, got very sick. She had cysts in her uterus, and even after surgery, she developed sepsis. She was dying. I told my friend that, and she said, oof, you wasted your money on surgery. I was absolutely furious. I yelled at her, are you ducking insane? Why would you say something like that about my one and only pet? Basically a member of my family. I was crying because my hamster was dying, and she replied, just buy another hamster. And she said, it's a fricking hamster. I couldn't believe it, how she talked to me like this. I asked why she'd say something so cruel, and she said, well, you didn't take my side before either. Remember when you said that's just how life goes? I'm saying the same thing now. That was it for me. I blocked her and ended our friendship. Even after that, she never apologized. I told her what you're going through and what I'm going through are not the same. When someone loses a life, even a small one, what you should do is comfort them, not mock them. But she still blamed me. So now I'm just left wondering, was it really my fault for not listening to her problems all the time? I mean, I know it's normal to listen to a friend sometimes, but constantly hearing about someone else's personal struggles and private issues until I'm completely drained, this is very exhausting. I'm posting this for my sister as she can't post yet. She's going through a hard time and said that she needed some opinions on her situation. Anyway, thank you for watching.